Hello, my name is M.W.Burnette. I am a home studio music producer, songwriter, and recording artist, and this is my video diary. So thank you for joining me. I was recently talking about this idea that the world that we live in is different from the world that God would envision for us to live in, because we tend to not want to trust other people. We want to be able to provide everything that we need for ourselves. It makes us feel insecure when we have to depend on other people. And I think that that's cause for a lot of the problems we see in the world today, is that we're all trying to get what we can and make sure that we're taken care of, and so is everybody else, and we end up fighting with each other for it. It causes all kinds of trouble. And if we could just get around that, if we could move closer to the vision that God has for us of living in community, where we share with each other and where we work for the good of everyone, not just try to take care of ourselves, the result is we actually all have more, because we're not wasting so much time and so much effort trying to keep other people from taking our share. If we can all share, we don't have to try to stop everyone else from stealing. Seems pretty obvious to me, but maybe not. But so anyway, in the last episode, I was talking about how automobiles are responsible for a lot of problems and really shape our world. I want to talk about that a little bit more. So I started out a little bit talking about just kind of how much space automobiles take up in terms of like the asphalt that is required for building streets and parking lots and so on and so forth, and all of the other infrastructure, guardrails, and the amount of impact that it has on the world, extracting all of the minerals and so on and so forth to build and to fuel automobiles. So there's a lot of energy and waste and just general impact on the world from these automobiles. If you think about the world that you live in, just think how much of it is dictated by using automobiles. Is at your home, you have a parking lot, most likely. You have somewhere to store a vehicle, most likely. I mean, unless you live in a place like New York or Paris or something like that. But even there, you're still going to be surrounded by parking garages, and there's going to be asphalt everywhere around you. You have an asphalt street that leads from your house to just about anywhere else in the world that you want to go. And there's kind of no getting around that. But I also want to talk about just the way that we locate buildings, the way that we design our cities and towns and so on and so forth. We design them around our automobiles. And I know this firsthand because that's actually what I do for a living. I'm not a professional musician. I'm a professional landscape architect. And so one of the things that we deal with in a very big way, I can't tell you how much of the work that we do centers around mitigating the conflict between human beings and automobiles. So that may be the biggest thing that we do, is figuring out how to get automobiles onto a site and avoid killing anyone who's walking around there. We try to make sites that are pleasant for people to be in, and automobiles really make that difficult because they're so greedy in terms of land space. You think about how big your house is versus if you have a garage. How much space in your house is taken up just for storing your car? It's a lot. It's probably the biggest room in your house. I mean, unless you're a whole lot better off than what I am. But and if you don't have a garage, then you think about just how much of your property is taken up by your driveway and the parking pad and so on and so forth, where you store your automobile when you're not using it. And compare that to the size of your house. Again, it's a lot more space. And it's just that way across the board. you think about the amount of buildable area on any piece of property that's used by human beings versus automobiles. And automobiles almost always take up more space. It doesn't matter how big the building is, the parking lot is bigger than that building. And it makes sense that it would be that way, because every person in that building takes up something in the neighborhood of about 9 square feet of space, whereas every automobile takes up 200 square feet of space in the parking lot, and that's not counting all of the access roads and lanes and so on and so forth to get you in and out of there. Our towns are shaped by automobiles because we've spread everybody out. See, automobiles allow us to do that, as we have our homes, miles apart. And that makes it necessary to own automobiles. So there's a cycle involved there. It's a what's the word I'm looking there? It's I guess it's a feedback loop that we have automobiles so we can build homes further apart. Because we can build homes further apart, we all have automobiles. So we build more streets. When we build more streets, it allows us to build more houses further apart, which requires us to build more streets to connect all of those houses. And so again, it's this cycle. It's this repeating cycle that just feeds on itself and perpetuates. That's what I was looking for. This self-perpetuating cycle. And again, like I was saying last time, is a lot of this is due to our failure to imagine that things can be different from that. And I want to give you an idea. It's like we all have this sort of picture of the American dream of our little house with our little, acre or so of land that's just sort of our own little castle there. I want to try to get you to at least imagine a different version of that. Is instead of everyone having an acre with their front yard and the white picket fence, what if we move several houses closer together? And instead of everyone having a big backyard that they have to mow and that they have to fertilize and maintain and so on and so forth, what if we took all of those backyards and combined them into just one big public space? Say if you've got 10 people who each have a 1 acre lot, that's going to be close to 10 acres of property that all of them have to maintain. So what if you just took about 1/4 of an acre of each one of those and gave it to those 10 people? So that's 10 quarters. So that's about 3 acres. So that's going to leave you between 7 and 8 acres of open space. Now think about all the things that you could do with 7 to 8 acres of open space. You can have forests, you can have parks and playgrounds, basketball and tennis courts. You can have mountain bike trails and hiking trails. All sorts of things can fit on that space if we just get past this idea that everybody has to have an acre backyard to do with themselves. And that's the thing. And so the more dense population gets, the more valuable that individual little space is. And it's really useless once you get into a high density situation, trying to give everybody just this little, whatever 1/4 of an acre or whatever. I mean, once you start getting into dense environments, that little 1/4 of an acre or 1/10 of an acre or whatever that's in your little section of the area, there's really not very much that you can do in that little space. But if you take, I'll give you the example. If you've got a development where it's, say 20 acres and it's got 200 houses on there, that leaves very little space for each of those 200 people. But if you can consolidate those 200 people into a smaller space and claim all of that yard area, then that collective area is a whole lot more useful than just those individual little postage stamp parcels that each individual has. And this goes this way all across the board. It doesn't matter how big your town is or how big your community is. If we can put our houses closer together and combine all of that yard space together, there's so much more that we can do there, and it's so much more pleasant. But again, it goes back to this idea that I was talking about before, where we have to trust one another to take care of each other. If we can get past this idea that I'm on my own and I have to provide everything that I need for myself, if we can get past that idea and work for the community, then we all benefit. Because like I was saying, is if we can all combine these individual yard areas that we have into a much bigger parcel, then we can all get a whole lot more enjoyment out of that much bigger parcel than we can on our own little individual postage stamp lots. It's all just this idea, this delusion even, that space gives us autonomy, when in fact it kind of makes us a prisoner to our automobiles. Because if we all don't have that space, if we're all not so far stretched apart, if all of our houses aren't so far apart, we don't have to drive so far to get everywhere. Because you can put all of those houses in kind of a smaller area, and you can put that smaller area a whole lot closer to your shopping and your office centers and so on and so forth. And you can still have lots of open space in that development so that you still have your connection with nature and with the outdoors. All these things, we kill all of those potentials. We kill all of those possibilities and all of that potential because we are so married to this idea of the little white house with the white picket fence and the big backyard. And if we can get past that, if we can imagine a different way, we can actually have something that's a whole lot better. So that's, again, I want to encourage you, I want to challenge you to imagine how the world could be different and realize that this truth, it can be better. It can be different. We just have to believe it and we have to work for it. So anyway, I don't know if you can hear the cicadas screaming at me right now, but that's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you for sticking around and listening. I'll see you next time.